It was one of those warm suburban evenings when everything felt calm, until the yelling started. Michael stood quietly outside his townhouse, pacing along the sidewalk with his phone in hand, glancing nervously down the street every few seconds. His hands trembled slightly, and his voice shook as he spoke to the 911 operator. "Yes, please hurry." "She can't breathe," he whispered. His wife Emily was inside, struggling with a severe asthma attack. The ambulance was only minutes away. But then she appeared. Karen, the self-proclaimed enforcer of the HOA, perfectly pressed blouse, clipboard in hand, and that unmistakable frown that screamed superiority. She marched straight toward Michael like she owned the entire neighborhood. "Excuse me, sir," she snapped, her voice echoing across the quiet street. "You can't just loiter here. This is private property, and you're making people uncomfortable." Michael turned, stunned. "Ma'am, I live here. My wife's having a medical emergency." Karen folded her arms, unimpressed. "That's no excuse for standing around looking suspicious. You've been pacing for 10 minutes. Either go inside or I'm calling security." Michael's face flushed red with a mix of frustration and fear. He pointed toward his door, where faint coughing could be heard. "Please, I'm waiting for the ambulance." Karen rolled her eyes dramatically. "Ambulance? Sure you are. That's what everyone says when they don't belong somewhere." She took out her phone and started dialing. Just then, the faint sound of sirens echoed in the distance. But instead of realizing her mistake, Karen doubled down. "You can't bring an ambulance here without HOA clearance," she barked. "You're disturbing the peace." Michael froze in disbelief. His wife was inside fighting for air, and now he had to deal with this? He took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. "Lady, this isn't about you. My wife could die." Karen stepped back, feigning offense. "Don't raise your voice at me. I'm documenting this. You'll be reported." The flashing red and blue lights grew closer, reflecting off Karen's shocked face as the ambulance finally pulled into the street. Paramedics jumped out and rushed past her, barely acknowledging her protests. Michael followed them inside, heart pounding. Karen stood motionless, realizing too late that she had just humiliated herself in front of the entire block. But what happened next would turn the entire neighborhood against her. The sirens faded into the distance as the ambulance sped away, carrying Emily to the hospital. Michael stood on the porch, his face pale but calm now that she was getting help. The neighbors, drawn out by the commotion, began to whisper among themselves. And in the center of it all stood Karen, still clutching her clipboard, still fuming, but now looking smaller than ever. "See?" she muttered defensively to no one in particular. He didn't need to be shouting like that. "I was just trying to maintain order." But her words didn't convince anyone. Mrs. Grant, the elderly woman from next door, crossed her arms. "Karen, he was waiting for an ambulance. How could you not see that?" Karen turned red. "Well, how was I supposed to know? He was pacing around like a loiterer." A young couple, new to the neighborhood, exchanged a look of disbelief. "You mean like a husband worried about his wife dying?" The man shot back. Others nodded in agreement. Karen's voice faltered. I was just doing my duty as HOA president." "Your duty?" Mrs. Grant's tone hardened. "Your duty is to help your neighbors, not humiliate them when they're terrified." Karen opened her mouth to argue, but the sound of Michael's door closing silenced her. He had returned, his face tired, his clothes disheveled, but his eyes were clear. "She's stable now," he said softly. They said it was close. A hush fell over the street. Then, Michael looked directly at Karen. "You made the worst night of my life even worse." His voice wasn't angry. It was calm, but heavy with disappointment. "All you had to do was listen." Karen blinked rapidly, her lips parting but no words coming out. She suddenly realized everyone was staring at her. Not with respect, not with fear, but with shame. That night, a post went up on the neighborhood group chat. It wasn't from Michael. It was from a resident who had seen the entire thing unfold from her window. The post described everything: Karen's accusations, her refusal to believe him, and how she yelled while an ambulance was on its way. Within minutes, the thread exploded with outrage. "Unbelievable. She's gone too far this time. Imagine if it were her husband." Karen's phone buzzed non-stop that night. She read every message, her face tightening as her reputation unraveled with each comment. But she wasn't done, not yet. Karen would soon decide to fight back and make everything even worse. By the next morning, the HOA group chat was on fire. Screenshots of Karen's confrontation with Michael were circulating like wildfire. Someone had even uploaded a short video from their doorbell camera, showing her shouting while Michael pleaded for help. The comments were brutal. "Who does she think she is? She yelled at him while his wife couldn't breathe? Karen needs to step down." But instead of apologizing, Karen doubled down. She stormed into the HOA office that morning, heels clicking sharply against the tile, her jaw clenched in indignation. "I'm not letting a bunch of gossip ruin my authority," she hissed to herself. Her plan? Damage control, HOA style. She drafted a long, official-sounding email to every resident, claiming the whole incident had been a misunderstanding. In her version of events, Michael had been acting erratic and aggressive, and she had politely intervened to keep the area safe. She even implied he had a history of causing disturbances. Within minutes, the email hit every inbox, but instead of silencing the outrage, it poured gasoline on it. Michael read the email while sitting at his wife's hospital bedside. His hands shook as he reached the end. A history of disturbances? He repeated in disbelief. Emily looked up weakly. She's lying about you? He nodded. Not just lying, trying to destroy me. Later that day, he returned home and found a crowd waiting outside. Neighbors, holding coffee cups and folded arms, ready to stand with him. Mrs. Grant stepped forward. Michael, we saw the email. Don't worry, nobody believes her. Meanwhile, across the street, Karen peered through her curtains, eyes darting nervously. Her phone rang. It was one of the HOA board members. Karen, we've had complaints, the voice said flatly. A lot of them. Karen snapped. Complaints? Against me? I was protecting this community. Protecting? The board member sighed. You humiliated a resident during a medical emergency. We can't defend that. Karen's heart pounded. So what are you saying? There was a pause. There's a vote scheduled for tonight to remove you as president. The color drained from her face. That evening, as the sun set over the quiet neighborhood, Karen sat alone in her spotless living room, staring at her reflection in the dark window. For the first time in years, she wasn't in control, and she could feel the entire community turning against her. But what happened at that HOA meeting? No one expected. The community center was packed that evening. Every seat was taken. Every eye fixed on the woman who once ruled their neighborhood like a queen. Karen. She sat stiffly at the front of the room, clutching a folder of notes, trying to look composed. But her hands trembled slightly, and for the first time, her confident smile looked forced. Michael sat in the back beside Mrs. Grant and a few other residents. His face was calm, but his eyes were distant, still heavy from sleepless nights at the hospital. Emily was recovering well, but he couldn't shake the memory of Karen's words echoing in his head. You're disturbing the peace. The HOA vice president, a quiet man named Robert, cleared his throat. We're here tonight to address recent events involving our HOA president, Karen McAllister, and her conduct toward resident Michael Harris. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Robert continued, multiple witnesses have confirmed that during a medical emergency, Karen confronted Mr. Harris without cause, accused him of loitering, and interfered with emergency services. Karen shot up from her chair. That's not true. I was trying to maintain order. I didn't know what was happening. A resident stood up. You yelled at him while he was calling an ambulance, Karen. We all saw the footage. Karen's voice cracked. That video doesn't show everything. He was pacing around. He looked suspicious. Michael finally stood. The room went silent. Suspicious? He said quietly. You mean a husband terrified his wife might die? Karen froze. Her lips parted, but no words came out. He continued, voice steady. You didn't just embarrass me. Karen, you showed everyone what power does when there's no compassion behind it. The silence that followed was crushing. Karen's eyes darted around the room, searching for even one sympathetic face. But all she saw were folded arms, shaking heads and disappointed stares. Robert looked down at the paper in his hands. We'll proceed with the vote. When the count ended, the result was undeniable. Unanimous removal. Karen stood in disbelief, her clipboard slipping from her hands and hitting the floor with a hollow clack. For once, she had nothing to say. As the meeting ended, Michael quietly walked past her toward the exit. For a moment, he paused beside her and said softly, Next time, just listen before you judge. He left without another word. Outside, the night was cool and peaceful, a sharp contrast to the storm that had just ended inside. And from that day forward, the neighborhood began to heal, free from the rule of its fallen queen. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share your thoughts in the comments below. I love reading your reactions. More real-life HOA and Karen stories are coming soon, so stay tuned.